about to enter a podcast filled with high strangeness, conspiracies, the paranormal, and legends from around the world, with your host, Ken Mark, and brought to you by WNIP Productions. This is Somewhere in Dreamland.
Hey dreamers, welcome to my first show. I hope everybody is good out there tonight in Dreamland because I have a special guest for you. Tonight, I'm going to be talking to Dr. Brian D. Parsons. Dr. Parsons is the director of GhostHelp.net. He was formerly a paranormal investigator from the years 1996 to 2011. He was the executive director of ParaNexus, and he's worked with a number of groups and organizations since 1996. He's also the host of Paranormal News Insider, one of my favorite ever radio show and podcasts. He's written 6 books: The Handbook for the Amateur Paranormal Investigator or Ghost Hunter, How to Become a Successful Paranormal Group, Betty's Ghost, A Guide to Paranormal Investigation, Handbook for the Amateur Paranormal Investigator 2, The Art and Science of Paranormal Investigations, The E4 Method, Breaking the Mold of Paranormal Investigation, The Handbook for the Amateur Cryptozoologist, one of my favorites, and The Handbook for the Amateur UFO Investigator. Brian holds a PhD in Metaphysical Humanistic Science, specializing in metaphysical science from the Institute of Metaphysical Humanistic Science. He is an ordained minister and is a state-licensed wedding officiant in the state of Ohio. He's also a public speaker appearing at various paranormal conferences, conventions, libraries, and other public and private speaking engagements. And now, without further ado, get yourself cozy, tuck yourself in, wrap yourself in your blanket, and come with me on a journey into
Dreamland.
Dr. Parsons, are you there?
Yes. How are you?
Hey, I'm great. How are you?
Not too bad.
Awesome. How was dinner with the wife? Did you guys go out?
Yeah, it was all right. We actually ordered food and we picked it up, but
Oh,
it's
yeah.
very good. You know, it's the times we live in.
Yes, sir. It's definitely a strange thing, isn't it?
Yeah, it's really strange.
Never thought I'd see anything like this in my whole entire life, but here we are. How's the weather there in Ohio? You're in Ohio, right?
Yeah, Northeast Ohio. So I'm just north of Akron in Macedonia.
Oh yeah, I know exactly where it is. I was
Okay.
born and raised in Canton.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I was just down there. The weekend we were staying just south of Canton at Atwood Lake.
Oh yeah, I love Atwood
Yeah,
Lake. It's
we were
awesome
there.
down
Yep, over the weekend. Kind of heard
Awesome.
pre-birthday stuff.
Great, man. That's awesome. Well, I guess I can get started here. Just gonna try to wing this, man. It's my first interview, so a little bit nervous, And
That's all right.
All right. So, doctor, can you explain metaphysical humanistic sciences for everyone?
So, metaphysical humanistic science is a big mouthful. There's a lot of stuff to it, but essentially, it's understanding the world around you through understanding people, and therefore yourself as well. So it's really do good to other people, but it's also understand how people act and how people react to things. It's a lot of psychology, but it's all about essentially just treating people the way you'd want to be treated. It kind of boils down to that, but there's obviously a lot more to it. But it's understanding the human condition through being a human being. And from there, it obviously branches out into metaphysics and paranormal topics and things like that. But the basic foundation is understand yourself so you can understand other people and take the time to understand other people.
Makes sense, right? It should be kind of a something everybody should do, I think.
Oh yeah. But I learned a lot, and I was kind of like on the fence with that, taking courses and getting a degree. gentleman who runs the organization. He started out with ParaNexus, anomalous research organization, which I joined. And, he's like, hey, I got these classes. Do you want to take these classes? I'll give you a little bit of a financial cut and everything. And say, yeah, I don't know. But I tell you, it was a very mind-altering experience. And it really changed a lot of aspects of my life. So looking back, I'm really happy I did it. Not just to have fancy letters after my name, but, it did help me out a lot mentally. Actually hit me at a good time right when my ghost group was kind of circling the drain. So it actually kind of helped me out with that as well.
Yeah, let's talk about ParaNexus a little bit. It's a fascinating website. It was on there, doing some research on there. I noticed that there's a researcher in dang near every state except for South Carolina, where I'm at now.
Yeah.
So if you could tell us a little bit about that, would be awesome.
Yeah. So a long time ago, pretty much I've been in the field for just about, 25 years, probably a little longer than that now, I guess. Not that I'm really counting days or months or anything, but there's always been groups. There's always been an effort for people to try and bring people together or to form kind of alliances or kind of a way that this is how we should do things. And I've been a part of a few of those. And when I saw ParaNexus, I kind of thought, well, that's just another one of those groups that are just trying to get people to listen to their opinions, and they're just trying to loop people together. So I actually kind of talked to them and wanted to see what they were about. And I was pretty blown away that they kind of fit where I was at, because I tried to do the same thing, and I'd been a part of some groups, but they were very level-headed about it, and they only really wanted the best of the best. So it wasn't about the sheer amount of people they could get to join. It was getting the quality. So it was quality over quantity. And I really liked that. I think that's the best way to do things. So I joined ParaNexus, I forget, I think 2006, and got involved with a lot of research topics. There was an anomalous evidence advisory board, which I was a part of. It was a 501c3. So it was an official, organization at the time, and we had board of directors. Ultimately, I made it on the board of directors, and it was a legit thing going on, and we were trying to alter the culture of paranormal investigation and really anomalous investigation. All three of the big fields: UFOs, cryptozoology, and ghosts. But it was a stress, it was a strain, and there was a lot of internal conflict, and not everybody agrees on things or gets along. So ultimately, we voted to basically just dissolve the corporation and the organization. So what remains is basically just research. Everything that we've accomplished for however long before I got there and since I've got there, it's just kind of stagnant now. It's just really just a flag still flapping in the breeze that shows that we can do this kind of stuff. It's out there, and here's what we've done. Here's our information. It's readily available. They also had a very popular radio show on ParaNexus that was on Blog Talk Radio. Show kind of tells you how old that was.
Yeah.
A long time ago. Really irritating. I still can't stand that lady. But it was kind of an introductory for me also to get into the radio business. I'd tried different things, but getting on that radio show that they had with ParaNexus, it was just a really good experience, ParaNexus Universe. And getting to co-host, I brought some people in that were skeptical, and they were kind of like, I'm not sure that's a good idea. But it went over pretty well. And it showed how dynamic we were as a group, as an organization.
Sure.
So, that's out there still as archives. They're still very, very popular. They still get a lot of clicks on those shows, even though we haven't done a show probably in, 10, 12 years, 15 years, something like that. I don't know.
Wow.
It's been a long time.
That's awesome.
But it's still there. It's kind of like my ghost organization website. I didn't want to, when I left the field, I didn't want to be like everyone else to just flick the switch or not pay the bill and you have an empty website, and all your work, all your time is pretty much wasted. That's kind of how I look at it. People just toss their stuff into the garbage. So I left that, website going. I kind of altered it from an investigator website into an information website so that people coming after me can, hopefully I can lower that learning curve and make smarter investigators from the get-go instead of people having to spin their wheels and learn on the fly or only get their knowledge and education from TV shows, which is pretty much worthless in my opinion.
Yes, agreed.
And I wanted to leave that out there. It's been running for quite a long time since, I forget what year, 2011, I think.
I like and appreciate that about you, that you've left that out there for up and comers, and maybe somebody will grasp a hold of that and the spark will fly again. And who knows? I mean, they'll go out and start their own thing. It's really awesome. Yeah.
I mean, ghost groups are a dime a dozen anymore. I mean, everybody's got one. You can go into any town, into any city, and there's literally 20, 30 groups. I mean, there's just so many, but obviously they're not built the same. The people that are in it they're all in it for different things. Each group is different. Yes, and it's always been that way. That's nothing new, but it seems like they don't want to take the time to really learn or understand things. Everyone's just like, hey, let's order our shirts and let's order a bunch of equipment and let's hit the road. And let's hit the lights, basically. And that's really, really backwards from how I started and how I learned how to do things. So we took our time, and I thought even after a year, that was way too quick for us to go into somebody's house. But it was a different generation. It was pre-cell phone and pre-World Wide Web, pretty much.
I remember those days.
35 millimeter cameras. We didn't have anything digital. Everything was cassettes. I mean, it's totally different now.
Yes, sir. Well, let's back up and go to that point, because I feel like I probably skipped over that. So the thing that got me interested about the paranormal and all that was a book that I got when I was a kid. It was a Ripley's Believe It or Not book, and it had all these crazy. It had everything like about witches. It had stuff about the lizard man in there and stuff that really, really got my wheels turning. And I'd like to find out how you started in this field, because you're kind of an OG in this field. You've been around and in this, like you said, for 25 some years, and that's awesome. So I really want to pick your brain and find out how you got started in it.
Sure. I mean, that's, just because I've been in 25 years, I haven't been doing things the entire time. Granted, I've been doing a radio show for quite a long time, so obviously I'm paying attention to what's going on. Investigations haven't really been a thing I've been doing. It's pretty rare that I go out. I think last year I went out once. Actually, no, I don't think I went out at all last year. The year before, maybe once or twice. And so it's few and far in between. But, I grew up with, I had TV shows too, like In Search Of with Leonard Nimoy was a pretty popular one. For me, it used to scare the crap out of me because we see Bigfoot there, and I'm like, I don't know if that's real or not.
Yes, sir.
And when I grew up, my parents told me these things didn't exist, and it wasn't to shape my belief system. I think it was pretty much because I was afraid of everything. I was the kind of kid that, and I think it was kindergarten, I found out that we had a skeleton inside of us, and I was like petrified. Like I was like, oh my God, are you serious? We have a skeleton? So I was scared of everything. I don't know so you grew up in the Cleveland area?
Yes, sir. Canton. Yes, sir.
Okay. So you probably heard of Big Chuck and Little John?
Oh yeah. Heck yeah.
Okay. So in the beginning of that TV show, it was like, for those that don't know, it was like a late night, they were like hosts of a late night cable show kind of thing. It was a local network, but these two clowny guys would come on and just do skits and do funny things. They would have said some really stupid movie. They were probably pretty scary to me at the time, but now I just probably laugh at them. But the beginning of their show, they had this claymation thing where it was like King Kong would come into the area where the radio station or the TV station was and knock down their tower. And it was the dumbest thing because it was claymation. It was terrible. It was terrible. But as a kid, it freaked me out. It scared me. And I remember if you go down Route 2, you could see the station there. So I was like, my gosh, that's real, And I grew up in a second-story condo, and I was afraid that this thing was going to come get me. I mean, that's how I was as a kid. I was afraid of everything. So you fast forward into pretty much college, out of high school, and trying to figure out where I fit into the world. And while I was in college, So I don't have one of those, I saw ghosts when I was a kid stories, unfortunately, which a lot of people do, but I don't. I never heard of anything. Never really heard anything about ghosts growing up. But when you're in college, you're young and, people do crazy things. And I think everybody has local urban legends in their area, no matter where you're at. And Ohio has a ton. Northeast Ohio has plenty. And I heard a few, and during that time, was also working full time. So I was around a lot of people. And I remember hearing about urban legends and hearing the stories. And I thought, that's just stupid. I can't believe people believe this stuff. And I'm kind of a weirdo in the fact that when I think about something, I need to know as much as I can. And sometimes it leads to a hobby. And I probably had 400 hobbies in my lifetime, from archery to kayaking to, I couldn't even tell you how many things I've been into over the years. But listening to these urban legends, it kind of got me wondering what's going on behind this. And it really, that mystery of not knowing kind of guided me to wanting to figure out. And at the same time, we had these kind of like study hall, study break things where people would just meet up, and between classes, you just kind of hang out. And I was helping some people write research papers, basically, which is weird because in high school, I almost flunked out of English. But here I am in college writing A papers. Every single paper I wrote was an A in English, which is weird, probably because I wasn't talking about Shakespeare or anything like that, because I couldn't stand that stuff.
Right.
So I didn't want to give my work away or have people see what I'd gotten A's for, because I didn't want to come back to me. And this urban legend thing kind of got under my skin to where I went out and I researched it, and not just researched it, but I wrote a paper on it. And when you do that kind of stuff, it really brings you into that totally. When you do research on anything, at least for me, I'm both hands in there, and I'm 100%. Now, this is back when, again, this is probably early 1996. So we didn't have the World Wide Web. We didn't have cell phones that we didn't have Google. It didn't even exist. Yeah. So we had these things called libraries that we had to walk into and actually go and do research and things. I did get a little sidetracked and started to read about ghosts and psychic research. And I was amazed to find out people were actually investigating ghosts still in the 20th century at the time. I'm like, wow, this is crazy. And, I didn't think too much of it, but people were really interested when they read that paper about the urban legends. And we always talked about ghosts and stuff like that. And I thought, not really think nothing of it. Summer comes and goes, and then comes back to fall, and people started talking about that. And all of a sudden people are looking for me and seeking me out. They're like, oh, that's that ghost guy. He knows all this stuff and that stuff. And like, I just studied it, I researched it, but I started to get kind of sucked into it over the summertime and continued to do a lot of research. And one thing led to another. Like I said, a lot of kids, young adults, teenagers go and do stupid stuff. So a lot of people wanted to go to these places, which some of them are illegal to go to. So I didn't want anything to do with that. I was actually probably at the time I was in the police academy. So I really couldn't do anything illegal or get myself in trouble. So I had to kind of keep my hands clean. So ultimately, those people just kind of got bored. They fell off. And the people that were really serious about it, we formed a group. And ultimately, we ended up, a friend of a neighbor's good friend had a ghost. So we went to this house, and the guy was a businessman. So he asked a lot of really interesting questions that none of us had an answer for. But ultimately, he said, "You guys have to have a leader. Who's your leader?" And we're all like, "Oh no, we just all, throw our 2 cents in and we go and do whatever we decide on." He's like, no, you got to have a leader. If you guys are going to have a group, you got to have a leader. And he kept naming all these qualities off about somebody who's knowledgeable, somebody who knows the topics and who can organize things and who's a good speaker and all this. And everyone kept looking at me, and I'm like, why is everyone looking at me? So I was nominated the group leader and actually had made fun of, back then, I guess even now today, it's one of the traditions that continues, is that every paranormal group is essentially an acronym or an attempted acronym.
Right. Right.
So I had made fun of it, and I said, "Oh, we should call ourselves Open for Ohio Paranormal Investigation Network." We need to network with each other. And somebody threw that out there, and I'd totally forgotten about it. That stuck. That became the name. The name actually started out as a joke, but ultimately that was kind of our thing. We wanted to network with other groups, other individuals, scientists, and parapsychologists. We want to continue to learn. And we didn't want to be that group that thinks they know everything, or that we've been around for a long time and you got to listen to us because we own this place, or whatever. I've seen it all through the years, but it worked for a while, and it lasted 15 years. I did take a little bit of a break right around the year 2000, and ultimately right around 2011 in the fall, I felt the pull that people wanted to form their own group. They wanted to do a lot of stuff I didn't want to do. I didn't want to. We got caught up in the whole teaching people and charging them money to come listen to us tell them what we thought about the paranormal to help pay for us to go to these haunted locations. And it was just this wheel, and went round and round. And I really didn't want to do it anymore. Some of these places are just an absolute joke, and we're spending $500 to $1,000 to spend like 4 hours in a location, which to me is just a complete waste of money.
Right.
You go to a casino, you throw down money, you expect to lose money, and it's entertainment. I get it. You go to a baseball game, you're going to spend $100, but it just seemed like an inordinate amount of money for what you're walking away with. And I just said, basically, hey, you guys want to go do it, but I'm not going to do it. And I just shut the group down at the time, and it was a very hard decision, but it worked out very well because it allowed me to break off and go do more research, which is what I started out doing in the beginning. And then, we got caught up in investigating cases for a number of years. But no flashy story. Just I got started on research. That's how I got into the field. Long story short, I guess too late.
Oh, that's awesome though. I mean, I feel like you've really latched on. You don't just focus on ghosts or the paranormal. You don't focus on just one thing, like one part of the paranormal. So many groups get caught up in we're ghost hunters or paranormal investigators. To me, paranormal is more than just ghosts. It's cryptozoology. It's anything that's not normal, right? It's ufology. It's all grouped into the paranormal, but people get stuck in these genres of the paranormal and they latch on. And one of the things I find fascinating about you is you really haven't latched on to that because you've written 6 books, and your books they're not just ghost hunting books or ghost investigation books. They deal with cryptozoology. They deal with UFOs and how to properly investigate these things. So what made you decide to be different than everybody else? And I appreciate that about you.
So, there's really nothing wrong about being just a ghost hunter. I think that if you do it right, you get really good at what you do, but I don't see a whole lot of people doing that right. They get stuck in their belief systems. They get stuck in repetition of the ways, and the group makes the decisions on how to do things and what to think. And groups as a whole kind of make really bad decisions when you're operating on opinions. And I've been there as a group leader. I've seen it happen to us. I look back and go, wait a minute, I don't believe in this stuff, but why are we doing it?
Yeah.
But being a ghost group, there's nothing wrong with that. But I do see that a lot of ghost groups, they wear thin after a while because they realize that everything that they thought was going on really isn't going on. And all that equipment that they spent all their money on, that they had an investment in, that turns into an investment in finding evidence, which is not really evidence, it's data, but they call it evidence. And that investment fools you for a while. But again, once you realize that that's not right, then these groups get bored. They realize that they wasted their time and their money, or they just get bored and they move on. But for me, it going into cryptozoology or into UFOs, into ufology, was really stemming from the work in the ghost field. So with ESP, I'd heard about UFO cases, UFO abductees or contactees that were dealing with ESP. And I thought, well, that's kind of weird. That's exactly what I've learned here in reading about parapsychology and psychical research. This ties in. So I kind of took a couple of cases on the side and kind of got sucked into it. And it's kind of the same thing with in the cryptid field, with especially with Bigfoot. There's a lot of stuff about ESP, about contact with these creatures, with mind-to-mind interaction, no talking. And there's also things like infrasound, which we talk about in the ghost field as well, that deals with cryptozoology. But those fields were kind of a natural fit for me as well, because I grew up at the foot of a municipal airport. I'm used to hearing airplanes go over constantly. I could tell you the different kinds of airplanes that were landing at at the little airport where I lived. And also where I lived was on the perimeter of the major international airport in Cleveland. So I'm used to seeing jumbo jets fly over my house. Very familiar with aircraft. I've always been obsessed with aircraft, and astronomy. So getting into UFOs, the UFO field, once I got over the subject matter, which was, I thought everybody in UFOs is completely kooky, and, most of them are, but that's okay. That's just how it is.
Right.
I realized that I already knew a lot about all the possible potential explanations that are out there. And I really felt like that gave me a leg up, that once I learned some of the history and the names and the terminology and different things, once I got that out of the way, everything else was easy. And investigating these cases was very simple for me. Same with cryptozoology. I'm an avid outdoorsman. I'm not a hunter per se, but I love hiking, backpacking. I've been to tons of forests, especially Pennsylvania, Southern Ohio. I've hiked, Florida down, in snake-infested places, out the Appalachian Mountains. I've been, hiking for years prior to getting to this field and knowing and understanding animals. I always wanted to learn how to track. I always thought that was cool. You see a TV show and the guy's like standing there and he looks at the ground. And he's like, yeah, there was 3 people. 2 were carrying a backpack, and, guy was smoking a Camel cigarette. It's like, how do you know all that? And it's always a joke. But then I realized that there are certain things that you can figure out about what you see. And, if an animal has an injury, they're going to walk a certain way. People walk certain ways when they're carrying weight versus when they're not, on different parts of their feet. And I learned all this stuff through reading and then actually going out. And I taught myself how to track. I taught myself how to track animals, and, going back where I walked and looking at what I was doing and my tracks and how I infringed on the environment. And, those kind of things helped me out when I decided to get into cryptozoology. It was just, again, learning all these fancy names about Bigfoot and Chupacabra and, Mothman and all these creatures.
All the good
which
ones,
is, where people, that's all they learn. They don't go any further than that. They just sit behind the keyboard, or if they do go out, everything's a squatch. So for me, I already had that I had the field knowledge going into these things. So it was a natural fit for me. And I'll tell you, the cryptid field, because this might be a question that you have, out of the 3 fields, my favorite is cryptozoology.
Mine too. I was going to ask you that.
Yeah, everybody asks that.
Mine too.
Yeah. So crypto, to me, it's more, I don't want to say realistic, but it's more tangible. You can go out there, you're in the woods, you hear animals, and, obviously things like Mothman, Jersey Devil, probably even Chupacabra. These probably are more urban legends than an actual flesh and blood creature. Let's be real. Maybe even Bigfoot, but maybe not. But some of these things, I'm very huge into mountain lions and the potential for mountain lions to be out here in the East, which they say they're not, which, people are like, well, that's a real animal. That's not a cryptid. But again, the Eastern cougar is extinct according to the government. So if they're here and they're breeding, that would make it a cryptid. So, that's one of my passions. So that's a, flesh and blood, real tangible animal that you can go out and actually look for, versus a ghost. What is a ghost? We've been trying to figure that out for 140 years now. Nobody really has an answer. Everyone has an opinion, but we don't know. Is it, an actual environmental thing? Is it really a person that's lingering? Is it just us imprinting the environment? It could be a lot of different things, or it could be a combination thereof. Nobody really has an answer. And, you may have experiences, you may hear things, may see things that could have been misinterpretation. It could have been a real thing, but you'll never really know because it's so elusive. And the same can be said with UFOs. Sometimes you go out and you see something in the sky and you're pretty sure it's not certain things, but you can never be sure. I mean, granted, I've seen things that were out there zigzagging in the sky, and sometimes that's your eyes that are trying to adjust on points of light that are almost infinity for your vision, and your eyes will dance around. It's a natural thing that happens to people that, I have to explain to people because they think, oh, no, I saw this thing moving all over the place. And it was just your eyes. But I've experienced things. I've seen things I can't explain, but that doesn't mean that it was a UFO. It could be anything up there because I know a lot, but I'm sure I don't know everything about how things move in space,
Right.
So, but, you talk about cryptozoology, flesh and blood creatures. They also have their fair share of urban legends, folklore, belief systems, which I'm really heavy into that aspect, whether it's ghosts, UFOs, or cryptids. The social aspect and the cultural aspect of belief, which is kind of weird because you think about like our culture and you think about how we're inundated with information. Probably of those three fields, ghosts, probably number one. Well, maybe not right now with the Sasquatch documentary. I think a lot of people are interested in Bigfoot right now again.
I just started watching that.
Yeah, I finished it last night. It's okay. Kind of drags on. But so you have, cryptozoology has always kind of come and gone. It was huge in the 70s. It's kind of come and gone. Ghosts are always, I think, number one. And UFOs, obviously, it's the last 2 years, it started to get some mainstream attention. But you think about it culturally, when you look at movies, there are probably 10 times more movies about aliens than there are about ghosts and cryptids combined.
Right.
So we're inundated with that stuff. And we think of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. It's all dealing with, some purple dude coming down here from, outer space and taking over and killing people. So it's, it's our fears manifested in that cultural thing. And so many movies are based on aliens, but you don't really see a whole lot of that with ghosts. I mean, you do, but only in the fall, it seems like.
Right. Well, a lot of people think that's the reason why that we've been hit with so many UFO movies and alien movies and things like that is because they're trying to condition us for what's coming. How do you feel about that?
Well, I mean, we've had, you had War of the Worlds was in the 1920s. So you had, a lot of movies, B-type movies in the 40s and 50s. What did the government really know back then? I don't think much. Right. I think it's just about our curiosity as human beings, staring up at the sky and wondering what's out there. We're afraid. Our biggest fear, other than dying, is losing our planet to some alien entity. So right. We have religion, which allows us to deal with the process of dying, or we just ignore it. We don't talk about it. We don't talk about death. We don't want to think about it. It makes our brains hurt. It gets us scared. We have to turn on the light. But when you think about aliens, you can't really hide from that. And there's no organization that you can go to that's going to talk you through that or tell you, well, if you live a good life, you'll never have to deal with aliens. There's nothing like that. Right. So that fear is always there because it's unknown. Nobody really knows. We can only see so far. As human beings, we've only been on the moon. And a lot of people don't even believe that.
All right.
So, which is crazy, but everything else is just, I'm just like in awe right now watching all the stuff come from Mars. I grew up reading National Geographic and seeing these things launch out into space and these grainy pictures. And now we've got like high def, images and sound coming from Mars. And that's just, it blows me away that we've gotten that. But then you step back and you think, man, that's all we've gotten in 40 years. Like that's just, it's crazy.
It is crazy. So you are or were a MUFON field investigator, is that correct?
So I wasn't actually a field investigator. It's kind of a trainee at the time.
Okay.
So that was early 2000s. I decided that I wanted to get trained in their methodology to actually conduct UFO investigations better. Plus, I didn't think I could fulfill that role of actually doing one to the end. So I wanted to learn as much as I could, but also know people that I could turn these cases over to, but still know who they were. So I didn't, feel like I was just, turning people to, a ghost group that didn't know what they were doing or something like that. But I got into it at the time. I had a lot of time. We were in between cases. We had not a lot going on. And the contact at the time with the state director was really, really bad. And I really felt like I was being led down a road of not being helped. And it was really annoying, really irritating. Couldn't get a hold of people that were supposed to help train me. So I ended up just kind of basically walking away from becoming an investigator, finishing it. And then I got busy with ghost stuff. So, then I thought, well, I probably don't have the time to invest as much as I wanted to. Pretty much at the time, I got a few months later, I took a promotion at work. So I really didn't have time to bite off anything more than what I was doing as a ghost investigator. So plus I had decided to get my team going again, and I still wanted to write more books. So I was like, I'll just leave that in the back seat. But I did invest in their field investigator manual, which is indispensable. Granted, I did write a book on the handbook for the UFO investigator, which I kind of didn't want to do because I felt like the MUFON field manual pretty much does it all, but it's over $100, and not everybody has that kind of money.
Right.
And it's kind of over the top scientific for the most part. But when they do investigations, I don't see them conduct themselves in how their manual is laid out. So I decided to take kind of that a little bit, but do it my way and kind of more of a realistic investigation methodology. And, a lot of the book is based on what I had written previously in the cryptid field and the ghost field, because it all comes down to an interview, whether people like it or not. People don't want to do an interview. They'd rather just say, okay, tell me what the cool stuff happened and where it's at, where we could plug our stuff in.
Right. Makes sense.
Yeah. That's the average interview for people. And it's annoying because a good interview can save you wasting time doing an investigation, because you can figure things out, or you can have them figure it out, or them realize that what they saw wasn't really what they saw. Instead of you having to drag your Pelican cases in and plug everything in and, tangle up all your cables and, whatever you're doing, wasting your batteries and sitting there for 5-6 hours that night, getting a hotel room or whatever, whatever you do. A thorough interview can save you a lot of time and headache and help somebody figure things out. So I did spend a lot of time with the interview aspect and some of the tricks that I've learned and some of the psychology behind a really good, thorough interview. And a lot of people didn't like that. Some of the feedback I've got was like, man, you waste way too much time on interviews in these books. But again, I think it's the foundation. I think those are the kind of people that I'm glad they read the book, but they didn't really take away what they should have, because, a solid interview will again, it'll save you time. And your goal should be to help somebody, not get your face on Time magazine. And I think that's what a lot of people want to do, is they want that piece of evidence. They want that EVP, or they want that picture.
That holy grail goose egg is what they want.
Yep, that holy grail, so they can get on the front page of a magazine, like Ghostbusters. I think they did it, they had it on front of, I think it was Time magazine or something.
Yeah.
And I think, whenever I see that image in that movie, I just think, man, that's just exactly, everyone's chasing that. Like you said, the holy grail, but that's not how it works. Unfortunately.
Well, that tells you that they're not entirely interested in the field or the science behind the field or learning anything about the field. They just want that piece of evidence that makes them, the Ghostbusters on the cover of the magazine,
Right. And it's, unfortunately, it's a lot of, dare I say, monkey see, monkey do. Everybody, a lot of people don't really know what they're doing, but they do it because that's what other people do, if that makes any sense. And, I hear people, I'll go to a conference or convention, or hang out with a ghost group, they'll invite me out, or we'll split the pay on a building, and, we'll talk shop before it, and they'll say, oh yeah, I'm an open-minded skeptic, and I don't really believe all this stuff. And we take science seriously. We do this, this, and this. And then you go out in the field with them and they're just like, oh my God, did you hear that? It's a ghost.
Yeah.
Like, okay, so you're totally not what you said you were. And, unfortunately, a lot of people are like that. And, it's easy to talk the talk, but to walk the walk is a completely different thing. And, the tools and technology has totally ruined the field. And people are just thinking that, hey, if I go out and I spend $5,000 on equipment, that'll get me better results. I have to be scientific, so I have to have this technology. Well, a K2 or any EMF detector is not scientific. It's a scientific tool, yes, but the way people are using it is more like a parlor trick. You're fooling yourself into thinking that you're dealing with something that you're not.
Right.
And they're not using it for its intended purpose. And really, what is the sign of a ghost? We really don't know. We don't even know what a ghost is. So how can you define, if you don't know what you're dealing with, then how do you know the signs of one or how to determine that you're dealing with one?
Right. Yeah, just because you get an EMF spike doesn't necessarily mean that you have a ghost. You don't know what's behind the wall that's
correct.
That it's pointed at. And going back to your point of the tools ruining the field, I'm going to elaborate on that more because I feel like the popular television shows have ruined the field completely. They drive me crazy. There's one in particular that I really don't like.
Could it have a guy named Zach in it?
Yes, I hate that show. I hate that guy so much. Drives me crazy.
Well, there's always so much focus and anger toward TV shows. And everyone's like, well, if it wasn't for the TV shows, we wouldn't have all this drama and all this negativity and all these bad things. But on the flip side, you wouldn't have as many people in the field. So it's continued that popularity. And, I've gotten into arguments with some big name people at some of these conferences. They'll say, oh, yeah, these TV shows, it wasn't for that. Before that, nobody was really into the field. And that's absolutely not true. Because I was around long before Ghost Hunters came on in the fall of 2004. That's really when it came out. But before that, the internet really brought us all together. When websites started coming on, we didn't start a website until like 1998. We had so many word of mouth, neighbors. We had a good network of people that knew a lot of people. We kept getting cases. It wasn't a problem. But then when groups, groups were multiplying back then before the year 2000. They were growing, and the internet really allowed people to see who was out there and exchanging of information. Yeah, it was pretty primal compared to what it is now. But there was a lot of networking going on, and there was a lot of groups. And obviously, a major network is not going to put a TV show on for things that are not popular. So the TV show really and truly was, because this was a huge underground thing, and TAPS was basically based out of the East Coast. Those guys, they had no clue what they were doing, by the way, back in the late 90s, early 2000s. I wish I would have saved emails from those knuckleheads. They had no clue. But it was a race. Every group out there in the East Coast was in a race to get on TV. It was just a thing back then. And they landed the deal. They got it big. And I hated it, but they did a good job, and they stuck to their guns for as long as they could before the network kind of ruined it for them. It wasn't their fault. It's just TV. People don't really understand the TV business very well. They think it's just you show up with a bunch of cameras and you film. That's absolutely not true. And Zach Bagans is full of crap when he says that we just film our own episodes. And you don't. You work for a network. You work for a room full of producers that basically tell you what to do. And you have an editor, an editing crew that basically puts things together for you. Yep. And you have sound guys. You have all that because you can go to Internet Movie Database, look it all up and see all the people that are on the show. It's not just 4 guys. But the TV shows made us popular. So I could tell you that in 96, 97, 98, 2000, when I was doing all this stuff, nobody knew it. Only the people in my group, some of my friends, my family had no clue. I had dated a girl. I lived with a girl for, I think, about 2.5 years. She had no clue I was doing this stuff on the side because that's crazy. People thought you were a nut job if you even talked about believing in ghosts back then. Right. Now I get on radio shows
Yeah, right.
Now I get invited to libraries. Now I walk into a room, and if I talk about, I had a ghost group, I write book. Oh my gosh, really? It was like, you're a rock star. They want your autograph. Girls are screaming. Okay, that doesn't happen, but people put you on that pedestal. You're a rock star, basically. If you're in the paranormal, it's kind of that. It's changed because it's become popular on TV, and that's good, but it's also bad. It has tarnished the field. It has moved the focus away from what it really should be. But you know what? All that stuff was there before TV. It's just it's embellished now. And like I said, you have more people. So when you have more people in any field, you're going to have more things go wrong, and you're going to have the focus be in the wrong direction. It's just unfortunately what you're going to get.
Right on. Let's go back to your paranormal investigation days. How many investigations do you think you were on in total?
I have no clue. I don't know. So I've met people that are like, they'll do an interview they have on their website. They're like, I've been on 3,426 investigations. Like, how in the hell do you know that? And what qualifies in this investigation? And some of these, I'll sit there and do the math, and I'll raise my hand and go, when did you start? Okay, so you're telling me that you do 4 investigations a week? That's not very quality.
Right.
So, I mean, I couldn't tell you. I never planned on, back in 1996 or 97 or 98, I couldn't even imagine 2021 ever occurring without having a flying car or something like that, let alone that I would still be, involved in this field or on a radio show. So I didn't keep track. I didn't keep count. And again, what really qualifies as an investigation. I've gone over coworkers' houses and sat and done an interview with somebody and gave them advice. Does that count? I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, right.
So in other cases, I've gone and visited 7, 8, maybe 10 times to the same house. Does each one count? So I don't know how that really works, but it's got to be, in the hundreds just with ghost cases, and not even including going to all these crazy places, all the asylums and prisons and hospitals that I've been to over the years. That's not included. And some of those, I don't always take those seriously because there's so much going on, and you really can't control the environment. So it's really not that, to me, and not really an investigation. It's more like you're just adding something else to your list of places that you've been, so you can brag about it later on. For me, it was just having these experiences. So when people say, "Oh yeah, man, this place was the best place I've ever been," and I can go, "Yeah, I've been there, and it's horrible," and I can give them the reasons why. And when they tell me, "Oh yeah, but the story about this," well, that's not true because we did research. We came out there 2 days before, and we researched that, and it's garbage.
Yeah,
they made that up, and so I can speak to some of these places, but I don't know. It's just there's no way I could really count all of them. But then it's also not including UFO cases or cryptid cases on top of it. But again, I would say probably in the hundreds if I had to guess. But I couldn't say 300 or 500 or 800. I really don't know at this point, but gosh, I wish I would have kept tally, because everyone else does. Like, we combined of 80 years experience. Like, how you just don't add up how old you are, and that's your experience level, and it's not how it works.
You know what though? I appreciate that about you. Like, I really do, because a lot of people, like you said, use that as a way to flex their muscles, and
and that's why I prefaced 25 years in the field, but I've not spent all of that concentrated on ghost stuff. I go to a library and people are like, "Oh gosh, how much money do you make?" I'm like, negative $3,000 because I spend more money a year on this stuff. I mean, websites alone, I have like 5 websites, and you're paying over $100 a month for hosting. Then my time. I mean, it's expensive. It's an expensive hobby, but a lot of stuff is though. So
right. So have you ever had a case in any of the fields where you were just completely blown away or intrigued or just thought was insane?
I mean, I've had a few in each field, but the most insane ones are when you're dealing with people that you realize aren't the people that you thought they were, or they're hiding things from you, or they're probably a danger to you. I've interviewed people that were obviously on drugs, or it kind of came out that they were on drugs, or, that's when you get a little nervous. I broke the golden rule a long time ago. I went to a case by myself, interview by myself, and didn't intend to investigate. I just brought a little briefcase full of stuff and sat and talked to the homeowner and his family. He lived with his family, so everybody was talking, and just things weren't adding up. Some of the stories they were saying, I was like, they were really reaching, and this guy was just making a big deal about nothing. And I thought, there's more to this story than what I'm seeing, and it may not be about a ghost. And I started asking other people questions, and come to find out this person had an alcohol addiction, and potentially they said, well, he used to be on drugs. So when I confronted this person, they said, I need to know before I, could bring my team in here, is there anything to do with, alcohol or drugs? And he flipped out, basically started turning over tables and throwing lamps. And I wasn't even sure if I could hit the door in time. I was scared for my safety at this point.
Right.
And I thought, man, I'm just sitting there like, I'm almost laughing to myself at the same time. Like, yeah, this is why they say that, man, never go to investigation by yourself. And I broke that golden rule. That's always, websites always used to, well, here's 10 tips to be a good ghost hunter. That was always something that every website had. Number one was always never go to investigation by yourself. So that was the last time I ever did that. Yeah. Because, you think about that. And if you go into somebody's basement and they lock you down there, they're like, I make my demons go away. And they're like, oh God, we're never getting out of here alive.
Right.
And you think it only happens on TV, but I'll tell you, it can happen there. And, the same, and I hate to bash the UFO field, but I've had quite a few people that were obviously in need of more help than what I could provide them. Does that make sense? I'm not a licensed counselor. I was going
to ask you about that, actually. I was going to ask you if, while you're vetting these cases, if that was part of the process, is some kind of psychology to find out if this person's really just crazy or needs mental help, or, that type of thing.
Sure. It's kind of funny because every time you talk to anybody, you break the ice, you talk about who you are, what's going on. And then you get down to the subject matter, and they always say, well, you're going to think I'm crazy, but everybody says that same thing. But my advice, and the way I used to not want to have to deal with people to, a certain extent. So I would try to live through emails. Well, emails only get you so far, and people have a hard time collecting their thoughts on emails. And then when you're dealing with just emails, people can change their story. So you got to be careful with that. So I learned pretty early on that once you get an email, you make a phone call as soon as you can. Even if it's 11 o'clock at night, you call and you take good notes, because that's the foundation. You get to somebody right away and you call them and you find out, okay, let me know what's going on. What do you think is going on? How do you feel about what's going on? You just don't ask, okay, tell me what happened. A lot of people they just want the facts. They want to know where things happen. I want to know how it's affecting them, or what they think it is, which is kind of weird because with ghosts, there does seem to be a lot of symbolism. So things that mean things to people are the things that are affected, and certain people seem to be a focus where other people aren't. So there seems to be, some emotion to that. But, you always question, is it coming from them, or is it because of the ghosts that they're dealing with? So, there's a lot of questions. You have to dig deep. You have to ask some personal questions sometimes to people. And I warn them in advance. I may ask you something that's going to make you tell me to get out of your house, or I may tell you something that you don't want to hear. So, if you want my help, you're going to have to take my advice. You're going to have to answer these questions and be truthful about it. And, that doesn't always work. We had a family that the entire family, so it was actually just a mom and I think 2 daughters. There might've been 3 daughters in the home. It just seemed like weird stuff, and I couldn't really figure it out. And I noticed that they were emailing me at weird hours. And so I asked them, what do you guys do? I'm in school, here's my job, this is my hours. And I'm like, how many days a week do you work? And then I asked them, what time are you guys going to bed? How much sleep do you guys get? Just kind of a off the cuff question. They were literally getting, each one of them might've gotten 2 hours of sleep at night.
Whoa.
And, some people claim that, that's all I need. That keeps me, I'm fine. But your brain can't handle that for too long a period of time.
Yeah,
and it really felt like that was affecting their judgment. I mean, and they would snap. They would just, during a conversation, they would all just start yelling and screaming at each other and just kind of like go off the handle over the dumbest things, and sleep will do that, sleep deprivation. So I printed out some stuff and I handed it to him. I was like, here, I said, this is some of the signs and symptoms of sleep deprivation. I think, we need to start here. I don't want to start at Z and work my way to A. Let's start at A and work our way to Z, if that makes sense. Oh my God. They threatened to, they had donated money to the website. They threatened me that if I didn't donate, if I didn't give their money back, they would sue me, kick me out of the house. And they went online and were lambasting me on every website. It's like, wow. I gave you advice. I told you, you're going to hear those tough things. And obviously that was the problem right there.
People don't want to hear the tough things.
Yeah, so it came down to one of investigators I had was a friend of somebody who knew her daughter. And a few months later, her daughter moved out because of all this drama going on. They had 5 or 6 ghost groups go in there. And finally, I think the mom fell asleep at the wheel, got into an accident, and that changed her tone real quick. And imagine that after she got out of the hospital and everything was fine, everything went away. So, had they listened to me, that could have cost them or saved them a lot of money in hospital costs. And, she wrecked her car and, a lot of other stuff happened. But, I'm just trying to do right by people, and sometimes they don't want to hear what you have to say. And, as a ghost investigator, I don't think people really realize what they're getting into. They think that they're just there to turn off lights and run around with a flashlight in the dark and listen for knocks or anything that goes weird. And that's all they're going to do. And they're going to pack the stuff up and go home. There's more to that. When you're doing a residential case or a client-based case, you're dealing with people first and foremost. Forget the ghost. Deal with the people first. But back to the original question is, I always call people first. If you call people first, you can vet out the crazies. You can figure out when people are desperate for attention, which is a lot of cases. That's how they used to be. Things have changed though through time. It seems like now people are a lot more educated on the paranormal than what they were 20 years ago because of these TV shows, because of all the internet groups. It doesn't take much to become, dare I say, an expert at all anymore. You just go on there and you read what everyone else says. You're up to date. Doesn't take much. It's all just circulated opinions pretty much. And the clients really just, all they want is for you to go in and validate their home is haunted. That's really all they want. It's confusing to me. That's kind of when I started getting out of it was, that's not what I'm here for. I'm here to help you through this, not to give you a certificate that you can hang on your wall or tell people, man, this guy said my house is haunted. Woo-hoo. And a lot of people want to get on TV.
Yeah, it goes back to that, right?
And I'm not
I'm not
about that.
Time magazine.
The second that I hear that, they're like, well, what if we don't sign this, that we don't want confidentiality, that none of us can go to a TV network? I actually had that. I actually made people sign that as a contract because I'm not dealing with that. Right. A lot of people would sign it up front and then all of a sudden they found out there's some weird stuff going on. And, you always got to be careful too about what you tell people that you think, because if you give them your opinion, you could say, well, probably not really a ghost here, but there's a chance. Oh, we've got a ghost. They go from that. Yeah. They only take what they want to hear kind of thing. And they have an investment in the ghost, or they would have contacted an electrician or a pest management system, company or something. But they called in a ghost investigator. So that tells you all you need to know. Their investment is in the ghost already. Right. But that's where the tools and the technology come in. If you use your tools correctly, I've kept a lot of electricians in business over the years, finding faulty wiring, bad grounding, all sorts of electrical problems. I've always been terrified of electricity. But through this field, I've become very comfortable at dealing with it because of all the stuff that we found that probably causing a lot of these issues.
Sure.
Bad grounding, bad shielding on refrigerators, on alarm clocks is a huge one that we found over the years. If you have an alarm clock in your house that's more than 10 years old, throw it away and get a new one. That's all I'm going to tell you, because you're frying your brain. You'd be surprised.
Wow.
Hey, take your EMF detector and wave it over your alarm clock. I mean, granted, we all have cell phones now, so that's not that big of a deal. But yeah, move it. If you have an alarm clock, move it away from your head. It's crazy how much is put down.
That's interesting.
Yeah, we've had a number of cases of people that were dealing with, nightmares, night terrors, which is always really hard to figure out. Dreams. I'm not a dream researcher or a sleep investigator, but we do that sweep and we find the high EMF in a room. It's like, why don't we start here? Move this away, give it a few nights and give us a call. And they're like, wow, what did you do? I can sleep better. I'm like, I moved your alarm clock 10 feet away. Crazy. But we've had that. Fish tanks, especially in kids' rooms, are pretty bad. When you have the little aerators, there's no shielding on those things. It's just putting out EMF left and right.
EMF, which messes with your brain. So
pretty much. I mean, not everybody agrees on it, but I'm telling you, I've seen enough in the field that I totally believe in that. I'll stand back when I'm using the microwave. Where I work, I have to wear a walkie-talkie all day, but I can hear interference as I'm walking through where I work. It's like, it's crazy what we deal with and what we see. And, one of my favorite stories is we worked a case where we were like the fourth ghost group in this house, and every ghost group is like terrified, all these things happening and high EMF spikes all over the place. And I noticed pretty much like within the first hour, I'm like, well, this is like on timing. Like it's every like 4 to 6 minutes. And I stood there with a piece of paper and I spent a whole hour writing down whenever the spikes hit. And, this is before Google and everything. So, we had to kind of do things old school, but I was, I already knew about basically the effect of, when you're using the EMF detector, you get hits or spikes, but it really doesn't tell you how close or how far away these things are. So in order to figure that out, you kind of have to move around. And we moved out toward the street, and they kept getting higher and higher. And I went into basically the neighbor's yard, and they kept getting higher and higher. So I was like, well, maybe it's their house. It's not the power lines. And we eventually went. We had to go around because they had a fence. So we had to go around the street, and there was a garage behind that house, and they had all these, they had a alarm system, and that alarm system was the spike, and it was like off the charts when you got close to it, but it was affecting not the homeowner. I don't think it was the cause of the ghost, but it was the ghost hunters were getting fueled by this, and nobody took the time to figure out where that was coming from. So once we eliminated that, then we were able to concentrate on other things. And one by one, we eliminated things, and the homeowner felt better. And once the homeowner feels better, it's really dealing with ghosts is really about dealing with people that are dealing with ghosts is really about empowerment. Once they feel like they understand that they're in control, that no ghost can really hurt you, despite what you see on TV, unless you scratch yourself in the dark or in the shower, these things aren't going to happen to you.
Right.
And it can't hurt you. It really can't if you don't want it to. If you wanted to, it probably could. But, fear, once you get that fear gone and you empower them and you allow them to understand their situation, and you take that big lump of things that are happening to them that they think are ghosts, and you start chipping away at it one by one, and you're just left with a few, they feel more comfortable, even if they can't explain everything, because they feel like they're in control. And usually that's when things stop. And we're out of business. Well, not really in business anyway, but you know what I mean? Like that case is done, and they don't contact us anymore because there's no reason to, because they feel better about what's going on. And that's what I don't like about most groups go in, they're like, yeah, your house is haunted. Good luck. And they're gone. They don't really do anything. It's just like,
they just validate it. That's it. They don't help you at all.
Gosh, I've talked to, I don't know how many ghost groups, and, either on through social media or in person or at a conference, and they'll sit there and, especially a conference, I cause so much trouble at conferences sometimes. But this ghost group's going through and they're bragging about how, this case and that case. There was another group that had like 900 investigations in the 2 years that they were around. I'm like, do the math. That's just like over two cases a week. How do you do that?
That's a lot.
So they're bragging about everything and talking about this case and that case. And I'm like, so how did you help any of these homeowners? What was the conclusion of this? Oh, the house is haunted. Right. The house is haunted. Okay. That's what you figured out. That's what you think. That's your opinion. But really what was, oh, no, it was haunted. We all agreed. Okay. Again, that's your opinion. But, what did you do for the homeowner? How did you solve the case? Oh, well, we did solve the case. We figured out it was haunted. Well, that's not solving anything. That's not helping them. I can tell you, I just finally bought a house last year. My wife and I had talked about moving out of state for years, so we didn't really invest anything. That's a lot of money.
Yeah. And
to not help somebody in their biggest investment, it should be a crime. If you're a pest company and you come in and you spray only part of the house, but the people paid for you to do the whole thing and you don't do it, you get taken to court. You can get sued. You can lose your license to have a business, but yet there's no repercussions for ghost investigators when they go in and they just tell somebody, yeah, here's your DVD of the evidence. We're out. We're going to be out at Waverly Hills this weekend, so don't bother calling us. What good is that going to do?
Right.
So, my goal is I don't care about what I gather. That's secondary. If somebody's in fear, I don't care about my tools. I don't care about figuring anything out. I'm there to help them. I'm there to figure it out, whatever that may be. Work with them to feel better at the end of the night, because I can pack all my crap up and throw it in the car and be gone, but they're stuck. They're there. And again, that's their biggest investment. So
that's kind of
you got to treat it that way.
That's kind of what Ghost Help does, right? Like that's kind of was your focus about Ghost Help, was it not?
So yeah, Ghost Help basically, I kind of lost the war with changing our group name at the time. So we stayed Ohio Paranormal Investigation Network, which is a mouthful. And I wanted to go more, less just stuck in Ohio to more of a bigger name, a bigger audience to be able to help people, or to get, kind of that name of, well, hey, these people know what they're talking about because they run Ghost Help.
Right.
And, just when the ghost team was around, it was just another ghost website. It's pretty much all we were. We just talked about different things. Some of the stuff that's on the website now at ghosthelp.net, some of it was there, but it wasn't what it is now. So after 2011, when I pretty much pulled the plug on the group and opted to do different things, I took that website and I reconfigured it into what it is now. And what it is now is basically a client help site, an investigator and researcher help website. So, clients, people will email me or call me and say, hey, we got a ghost. We don't know what to do. So I kind of have a step-by-step walkthrough of what a homeowner can do before worrying about calling a ghost investigator. Because, I feel like that's just the worst thing you can do is just call somebody up and say, hey, come into our house. First of all, you don't know who these people are. I've had a few people try to join my group that, I do background checks and found out that they're criminals. Like, no, I'm not going to do that. I don't carry, and it never carried insurance, which if I did a group again, I would definitely carry insurance. And then be able to vet people out that way. But, I learned that lesson through another group that had, an ex-convict go into a house and was stealing stuff. And they all got into a lot of trouble. So, I learned that right away. So I kind of clue in the homeowner, and I also clue them into what they should expect from a ghost group. The questions that they should be asking them up front. Just don't turn them loose into your house. Here's the things you ask them, and which I'd always wanted to do that anyway. But I found that the clients don't read that. They just like, where's the contact page? And that's all they care about. So it kind of backfired, but at least I feel better at night. I can sleep better knowing that I've made the effort. And also the investigator piece, the researcher and investigator, I kind of look at researchers and investigators as kind of different things, even though the words mean the same thing, basically. So a researcher is somebody who's going to spend time in a chair and a computer away from a place to gather research or information, whether it's at a library or a government building to get information about property or whatever it is. That's a researcher. An investigator is somebody with boots on the ground that's actually inside of a facility, whether it's a house or place of business or whatever it is, actually physically dealing with the clients and or the environments or both. But you can be both. But I wanted to kind of separate it a little bit, even though I never really got around to doing 3 different sites. It's basically just 2. But there's a ton of information for researchers and investigators. And again, I didn't want to, flip the switch. And when I walked out of that room and said, hey, I'm done, and shut the door and the lights go off and the website's, shut off. And I want to leave behind some information. Again, it makes me feel better that I've left something behind other than books, which, most of those books are outdated at this point. But, the first 3 are pretty much outdated. But, I wanted to leave something behind. And, every now and again, I'll add something to it just to keep it kind of up to date. But, a lot of that information doesn't go out of date. There's an expiration date for some of this information. So right. I just wanted to, again, leave something behind for the clients and for researchers, because I think it's important to leave behind what you've learned for the next group of people that are coming through. It's a revolving door out there. Most ghost groups, they don't make it 6 months. And your average group probably lasts maybe a year or 2 at most. And believe me, I know, because through the radio show that I've been doing since 2008, it's a revolving door of people that listen to my show. Maybe it's because the show's horrible. I don't know. But
no, I love it.
I mean, you hear people that are like, they're all gung-ho into the field and then they're gone. It's just once you figure things out, once you figure out what you're there for, you get that information. A lot of people they move on. They just find something else. Like, well, now I'm into crime drama podcasts.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. But, very, very few people stick with the paranormal that long. It's just unfortunate. That's the nature of the beast.
Yeah.
So I don't take it personal, but I didn't think I would be here this long too. I quit a few times thinking, hey, I'm done.
It's a hard thing to quit.
Yeah.
I feel you. Like, I understand what you're saying. Like, I'm kind of the same way. Life takes you in a bunch of different directions, but for the most part, like, I feel like the paranormal is something that's instilled in me, something that it's just so fascinating. Every aspect of it to me is fascinating. And that's why I wanted to talk to you tonight, because I wanted to kind of get level-headed. I feel like you have a skeptical approach to everything, which I appreciate. And I just wanted to hear from you, like how you do things. And I loved it.
Yeah, you have to be skeptical. It's easy to believe in anything and everything. And I was there, trust me. When I first started out, I was stupid. I believed everything but orbs, by the way. Yeah. But then slowly, one by one, I realized that this is not just opinions and conjecture. It's not really, these aren't hard answers. And so, that was what kept me going, was trying to figure out, not just for myself, but the answer specifically, not just generally, subjectively, which it's impossible, no matter how hard you try, it's all subjective.
Yes.
It's kept me going. And I've warned people when I'm at conventions and they're like, oh, I'm going to buy this book. I warn them, like, I don't care how old or how young you are. Once you pick up that book and you read that, you're not leaving the field. You're not, you start a group, you're in it for good. It's very hard to walk away. I mean, I've seen people that have, when they become too skeptical, and I have a lot of skeptical friends. I have people that, Benjamin Radford, who's he's as skeptical as you get. He's a good friend of mine that I've leaned on for information and kind of direction for certain projects. And you got to have that. You got to have friends on both sides of the fence, because if you lean one way, you're missing out on something else. And if you're too big of a believer, you're denying the skeptical angle. And if you're a hardcore skeptic, you're denying, there's a what I call unwavering ends of denial. So if you're on either end of that thing, you're ignorant to the other aspect. So I try to keep myself planted in the middle as much as I can, pretty much with everything in my life. I've learned that's the key. Never get too excited about a baseball game, because the higher the highs, the lower the lows. And if you get too caught up in one thing, it's going to bite you in the butt, and you're going to be all the way down at the other end of that ladder sometimes. Or, don't let things get you down too much, because then, celebrating too much is never a good thing anyway. But, trying to be even keeled with life and things. But, it comes in way more handy in the paranormal than it does life, because if you let your mind wander, you get caught up in beliefs, you get lost very quickly, and you make assumptions, and you can hurt people. You can make people sell their house. You can make people lose their money. You can make people lose their minds over these things. And
you can
people
start a cult.
Oh gosh, yeah. Hopefully that never happens. Right. Absolutely. So,
but
it's a big responsibility.
To that point, that's when you take the middle lane in between everything. If you lean too far one way or another, like you said, and that's when crazy or bad stuff, or you miss something on the other side. That's when all that happens.
Well, I'm sure, I'd be lying if I didn't say the tires are a little closer to the edge of skepticism than I am to the middle of the road. That's because the field is just full of people that believe blindly, and you kind of have to pull that anchor a little harder to that side. You really do. And, I've seen that from day one, and I just, I don't want to go down that road again where I was kind of believing in stuff, and I've said stuff to people that I'm just like, my God, I can't believe I said that, because it's not true. It's just, it was a feeling or an opinion that I had that I kind of spewed out as truth, and it's really not. Yeah. There's nothing to back it up. So, now I'm very careful with it. And again, it's hard to be that way. You always want to feel like you want to take a side, or sometimes I'm on the show and I'm talking about a UFO thing, and I really feel like just saying, if you think this is UFO, you're out of your mind. You're stupid. But you can't do that, because
right.
You're going to alienate people. No pun intended. Well, maybe pun intended. But, you have to reach people through that, because they believe in it. They wouldn't listen to a paranormal show. So you have to reach them through that and educate them. That, hey, this one wasn't, but maybe the next one will be. And the next one comes and it's not, and it's been that way for years. Like most of these stories, there's explanations for it, just people don't want to hear them.
Yeah.
Or they think, well, you collective whole, when you talk to like UFO people or even Bigfoot people, well, there's so many cases that has to prove that it's real. Well, not really, because when you start breaking down each case, they're all explainable, or they have high potential explanations. This one was a bear, this one was a tree, this person was a lunatic. So, you can start busting those things down. So you say, okay, if I take all these and I say these are explainable, and you're left with a lot less, does that change your opinion? You know what I mean? So you got to watch. You got to watch. There's a lot of things that fool our minds in this. There's a lot of perception things, a lot of illusions that happen that you have to really be careful of and not get caught up in.
Absolutely. Well, I'm going to wrap things up, but I want to ask you two more questions.
Sure.
First of all, what one bit of advice would you offer to somebody who just wants to start out investigating? Your best bit of advice for them. What would that be? So
as a ghost researcher?
Yeah, sure.
I think it's something I already said tonight. It's remember, you're not investigating a ghost. You're dealing with somebody's perception of a ghost. So you're dealing with their perception, their emotion, their viewpoint of things. So don't look at it as you're investigating ghosts, because we're not investigating ghosts. We're investigating the story of somebody who think they saw ghosts. So stick with the story, and stick with the perception, and stick with the person.
Makes sense. I like it. The other thing I was going to ask is where can someone find your books and listen to your show?
So the best way to get everything is through BrianDParsons.com. That's BRIAND Parsons with an S at the end .com. And from there, I have a link to books. All my books are there as well. You can get them on Amazon and other book retailers, but they take a big cut. So get it from the source.
All right.
That's what I say. Yeah, briandparsons.com. And again, Paranormal News Insider. You can find that at paranewsinsider.com. And that's every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. And if you go to paranewsinsider.com, you can find the links to listen live. And the podcast is pretty much available anywhere and everywhere known to man, from Apple to Google to everything in between. So if you have your favorite way of listening to podcasts, I can pretty much guarantee my show is on that way as well.
I listen on Spotify. I absolutely love your show. I find it so informative, and I find all kinds of cool little stories and news bits that I can't get anywhere else, really. I don't know how you find these things, man. It's awesome.
Yeah, I've honed that over years, since 2008, been doing that show. So there's little tricks to getting it. And, you know, if you look at the paranormal news sites, they're usually a couple of days behind on everything. You know, usually you see stuff pop up in social media, but even then I've punched some stories before they were really big. So, it's a lot of work, to be honest with you. I mean, you would know as you know, getting a show started and doing a show, especially interviewing people, and you have to research them and get to know who they are, and then kind of figure out your gameplay on how you're going to interview them. It's the same with a show like that. That's why I don't do interviews, because I want to concentrate on the information and these stories instead of worrying about, you know, having a guest on top of all that.
Right. Yeah. Makes sense. All right, Dr. Well, hey, I really, really appreciate your time. I really do. And I feel like this interview was very informative, and anyone listening is really going to take a lot away from it. And I appreciate it. I
hope so. Yeah, it was fun. I enjoy talking about any topic and every topic. It is a lot of fun, and to share my knowledge and experiences, I find it beneficial. It makes me sleep better at night too.
Right. Yeah, I love it, man. I thank you, sir.
Sure. Thank you.
Well, that about does it for Dreamland tonight, dreamers. If you like the show, please remember to hit the subscribe button and feel free to leave us a review. Thanks again for listening, and good night.